you for joining. Um, I'm going to go ahead and jump in and get started as folks continue to trickle in because I'm so excited about today's talk and I want to get through as much of the time as we can with our. Oh, I muted myself. Sorry. I meant to just shrink my screen. But yeah, so I'm going to jump right into things here and welcome you to our Climate Farm School conversation series. Or today, it's actually a fireside chat because I have my little fire going in my wood stove and it's a cozy morning in Sonoma County. Um, so it's a total pleasure for me to welcome Max and Michael and Spencer to join us and lead this discussion today around art and farming. And it's really a full circle moment for me in our program year because it was right around the spring equinox when we hosted Max and Michael and Nick and Spencer and a few other folks for a dinner at Green Valley Farm. And it was the first time for me really talking about this intersection of art and farming. And it was coming out of the last winter's hibernation period. And it was one of like the best dinner parties I feel like I've ever hosted because we were dreaming up some of the possibilities around hosting musical events on farms. And now we get to be here and sort of reminisce on doing that at the MORF event launch event that happened in July at Solar Punk and talk together about how we can all participate in planting more of these kind of joyful art and farming seeds moving into the future. So I am going to briefly introduce our three panelists that are here, Spencer and Max and Michael, and then we're going to introduce them a little bit further through some videos and photos that we have. Um, and then we'll jump right into the conversation. So I'm going to read these bios because they're pretty awesome and incredible. So Max and Michael, who created the initiative Music on Regenerative Farms, met while studying at Berklee College of Music in Boston. Having played hundreds of shows as solo artists, Max and Michael, over the course of their careers, are currently launching their duo project, The Lonely Parrots. As an NBC Songland and American Idol alum, Max traveled nomadically across the US for almost 2 years, visiting sustainable farms along the way. And in a conversation that can only be described as serendipitous, picture the two of them post car crash sitting on a beach in Half Moon Bay watching the sunset. An idea took shape. Michael, so far sounds veteran and critically acclaimed San Francisco theater performer, connected the dots that led to the inception of MORF, or Music on Regenerative Farms. Moved by their joint passion for nature, as well as the desire to contribute to the climate justice movement, Morph aims to reshape our connection as humans to the way we grow food, heal our soil, and celebrate community and art. Yay, Max and Michael. Okay, Spencer is here from Solar Punk Farms. Spencer is a writer and climate strategist based in Sonoma County. He leads projects, with One Earth to map funding flows across climate solutions while cultivating Solar Punk Farms, a land regeneration project and community hub that we'll see in a really cool reel in a moment. His forthcoming book with HarperCollins, As If We Were Staying, weaves memoir, eco-philosophy, and cultural critique to explore resilience in an era of climate breakdown. And Spencer, along with Nick, are both amazing community builders and I would say like reshaping the bioregional economy of Sonoma County through their land project and their other climate related work. So welcome. And Claire, if you want to share your screen and share a couple of the photos, we'll use that before we get into our questions for Max and Michael and Spencer.
Absolutely. I say we start with this video. It's one of my favorites.
Oh, yes.
Exactly 5 years ago, we started turning this compacted dirt lot into a regenerative farm. This week, we finally took a chance to look back and appreciate what life can do when you give it a little bit of space to run. Hey, my name's Nick, and this is Spencer, and we started Solar Punk Farms with the hope of building a cool strategy and storytelling. And one day we decided we wanted to know what it would be like to get out from behind the hippy computers and physically go through the process of regenerating. So starting in summer of 2020, we've worked to turn this little plot of compacted sand and weeds into a bustling little farm and food forest. So far, we've planted more than 90 trees, pears, persimmons, pomegranates, peaches, plums, plenty of other cute stuff, plus a bunch of native drought tolerant and pollinator plants to keep all those trees company. Besides the overwhelming joy of witnessing bees and birds and bats and bobcats, our favorite part of this journey really has been the community that's come together to take part, getting their hands dirty. And that was always the point. We weren't trying to be some escapist homesteaders. We were trying to build a gathering space that got people together, excited, inspired, and invested in local ecosystems. And most importantly, thinking about how we can better steward them. So we are sitting on an 11-hour train, looking at old photos, and decided to make this video as a way to say thanks to all the digital and physical folks who have joined us on this journey, learned with us, watched us fail, and helped us make this world a little bit gayer, a little bit grander, a lot of it greener.
So many what? Many bumble butts. Get in there.
Yay! That video is so fun. It's so great to see all the ways that the land has transformed and all the beautiful people that come and visit it. So let's see. Yeah, these are some of the videos from the beautiful MORF event that happened this last summer that I felt very lucky to be at. Let's see. There were like vendors. Yeah, I don't know how much you want to dig into this because I know we have a lot to talk about, but yeah, there was a lot of really beautiful, beautiful stuff that took place.
I love this place so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go.
I love it.
A little overview.
Thanks for the tour. Okay, so we are going to talk a little bit more about the MORF event in a minute or a couple minutes here. But I want to first turn it over to Spencer to please elaborate on the brief intro that I just shared and talk a little bit about how you and Nick met and connected. And what was the catalytic moment for you that led you to buy land and start Solar Punk Farms? Because I don't know that I've heard that story.
Yeah. Well, hi everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for organizing this, Lainey, and the Climate Farm School. So yeah, Nick and I met in San Francisco in 2017. We actually met on Instagram randomly. And I was working in biotech and he was working, he had like come up through the ad world and then went into strategy, brand strategy. And he was working more at like tech companies, and at the same time, around 2018, IPCC report came out, and kind of like climate was very much on everyone's mind. We both kind of started figuring out how we could shift our careers to focus more on climate change. So I ended up leaving my job in 2019 with kind of just like, I'd always wanted to be a writer, and science educator, communicator. I was like, I want to focus on climate. So I just kind of like quit my job and tried to make that happen. And Nick at the same time started working on more for climate related and agriculture related companies. And then we kind of just started, Nick had lived in the city for 10 years and we started looking for farms in 2019. I think it was honestly slightly spurred by the fact that we had seen Biggest Little Farm and that I had done an artist in residency on a farm in Italy. And maybe we'll talk about that later because it's kind of also at the intersection of art and farming. And I think those two things together were like, what if in 5-10 years we start a farm together and kind of get to go through the regeneration process ourselves? I think as storytellers, our goal was to kind of like tell the story from our perspective and get to have that very like visceral, hands-on experience. And so we started looking in 2019, and then COVID happened. We're like, let's make this happen now. And so Guerneville was kind of the perfect spot for us. It is just like an hour and 20-minute drive north of San Francisco where we lived. It already is like a queer destination town. So that made it really attractive for us as part of our land project was to get as many people on site as possible. And like, I don't even know if we would have actually done it if we didn't find the particular spot that we are now at. Because it's so perfectly located for everything we wanted to do. It's pretty close to the town and it's on the way to the state park, the Armstrong Redwoods. And so like people are passing through all the time, and like it makes it a great place to get people on site, get them excited about regeneration. So that's kind of how we ended up where we ended up. And since then, we've just been trying to turn it into an educational regeneration farm and community space.
Amazing. Yeah, I do want to come back to Italy and what brought you to that intersection of art and farming. And we're going to be kind of exploring this idea of what does the intersection of art and farming look like for our panelists and all of us here over the next 45 minutes or so. But yeah, Max and Michael, if you want to elaborate on your origin story and why you decided that music should be played on farms, primarily or not exclusively. Yeah, what brought that intersection into your minds as you all connected?
Um, so we were both musicians, first and foremost, and we met, what, like 12 years ago or something like that? 11 years ago, uh, in music school. And both kind of went through our separate journeys that had like, we would see each other throughout the years, but weren't like working together in any capacity and going through our separate journeys of like figuring out what it means to be like an independent musician and making a living and feeling purpose in it all. And I think living in LA was one far end of the experience of being an indie artist that is like very, I mean, I don't know if any, well, I know Claire, for example, lives in LA and she grew up there. And I think it can be such a beautiful, wonderful place to live and be. But I think also when you're as an artist in the epicenter of like the entertainment industry, it can be really overwhelming. And maybe sometimes when like the shine of it all and the what's considered successful is at the forefront of your mind, like the joy of being a musician can like fall away. And so for me, it was like mid or halfway through the pandemic that I allowed myself to realize that I wasn't very joyful with what I was doing or feeling fulfilled. And it's funny that Spencer was you were talking about Biggest Little Farm, and it is kind of I don't know, I feel kind of cliche saying this a lot of the time, but like that was the first documentary that I saw about regenerative farming, and there were other ones like not Common Ground, what is it, Kiss the Ground. That was the first documentary of those. But I was just like, I heard about regenerative farming. It got me so excited because I think I had been reading a lot of books on like the climate crisis and all the different facets of the ecological crises. And it's a really depressing thing to get into, or it can be anyway. And then once I heard about regenerative farming, I feel like this new world opened up to me that I was like, wow, this doesn't have to be a really sad, depressing story. It can be very joyful when people come together and like regenerate the land and grow food in a way that's healthy for us and Earth. Um, and I had already played some house shows where it's just like as an indie artist, you just bring your gear and play in somebody's living room or backyard or whatever, like very scrappy DIY, but super fun. And it just like was this one thought in my mind that was if I can play house shows, then I can play on farms. And that would bring me so much joy. So I just cold emailed a bunch of like, farms in California and was like, hey, would you ever want live music? Which a lot of them did. And I started playing them a little bit and visited Michael. I was like nomadic at the time, and I would visit him here and there in San Francisco and telling him about my experiences on these farms, which maybe you can take off from here. But
I mean, you're doing good.
I just like I was sharing my experiences and he got really excited about it. And we figured that like this doesn't have to end with like one little indie artist doing this, but like ideally we want this to be everywhere. Like we want musicians and artists to get the chance to create or like not share their art in those spaces, in nature spaces, and have art be sort of like the incentive maybe for some other folks who don't know much about regenerative farming to come to permaculture spaces and have a joyful experience by way of like being in community, experiencing music or other art also. It could be other art, but like for us, obviously it's the music lens. And yeah, walk away was like, I guess, a bit of a core memory and a new understanding of like, I guess at the core, not even like how they can change everything in their lives to be more sustainable, even though that would be a great thing too. But I want people to leave these events with like a feeling of hope and like understanding that climate action and yeah, climate resilience doesn't have to be sad all the time, but it can be communal, joyful, and yeah, based around art.
That's amazing that you found that at the intersection of your skills and emerging interests and turned something around that is really anxiety producing and grief inducing, like understanding the climate, ecological, biodiversity crises into a space of joy and action and hope. So I want to hear a little bit more about the space that you all created at Solar Punk Spencer and why like how art filters into that space of growing a food forest and like plants back onto a horse paddock pasture or not pasture, just horse arena. And also why the MORF event came to be at Solar Punk Farms last summer. Because I mean, I don't want to take all the credit, but I was at this dinner in March and I was like, look at these people meeting and making a plan. But like, I think that they already wanted to do it there because you guys have created this hub at Solar Punk. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about how art and community feature on the land, how you bring that all together, because it's not very common for farms that produce food to center that from the beginning, I wouldn't say.
Yeah, I think part of the reason is because we don't come from a farming background and we came more from like we moved to the farm, but are more naturally about cultural change and doing that through storytelling, through writing, through uh, like strategic means. And so I think from the get-go, our goal was Nick and I are both very focused on kind of cultural change towards more ecological based values. And so our real goal is to create community around values that center ecological well-being and social well-being. And make sure that participating in that is really fun so that people don't feel like it's a chore to be engaged in climate action. And so from there, like our mission and our vibe has always been like very playful, very welcoming, community centered, and ultimately like fun and sexy. And so that's been what we've been trying to build our organization around is that kind of energy. And I think that art is all of those things. And so I think that we've been trying to create a vessel for art. I don't, Nick and I aren't necessarily like artists in that way. I think we're more like strategists. And, I don't know, but and so it's really nice when we meet artists who are like, "Hi, we've created this space. Like, please come fill it with your incredible creativity." And so it seems super natural when we're having a dinner. Free Valley that it was like we love that. That's what we created this farm for. And it's so cool that you're specifically focused on regeneration. So yeah, I think that over the years, our first roommate was like a muralist and did a mural on the farm, and we've created this greenhouse that is less practical and more like aesthetic, but both at the same time because I think it draws people in, and that's what we're. It's almost become kind of like a local landmark. We want people to ask questions like, "What's going on there?" Like, "Oh, a regenerative farm. What's that?" So I think that's the direction we're heading. We're still like we want to do much more with artists. We haven't figured out how to do a residency yet, quite yet, and that's what we're really working on. So we want more people coming to bring their energy and sharing it with others.
Totally. And Laura, who is one of our alumni who came to Solar Punk in April for as part of our Clement Farm School course, would just put a nice comment in the chat about facilitation is an art form, and it is something that is a really beautiful artistic contribution because you're weaving together that social network and web in a very artful way that sparks other forms of creativity. So that's I really appreciate that. I'm not like a um, musician or artist that has like a media, but I love the art of facilitation.
That's a great word for it, and thank you for for saying that and for helping me next time when I have to say who we are.
Or artists in the form of facilitation. Yeah, that's awesome. And Okay, I wanna go back to Max and Michael and thinking about the Morph event that happened at Solar Punk in July. Sort of what were any of your key takeaways from that event, and what are you hoping will maybe come next for music on regenerative farms? Like, what were there seeds that were planted there, or the other ideas that you've been having in the past 5 or 6 months about kind of the potential for this initiative, and where you maybe seek more collaboration?
That is a great question. I want to well, sort of speak to what you were talking about, Lainey, in terms of like that dinner that brought us all together. I think that beside like I mean the whole point of it being a joyful experience to like have art and regenerative farming meet, I think what I'm trying to say is like there's so much isolation right now that's happening through like the digital age that we live in and like people being in their own little worlds and we're I think told that individual like hyper individualism is like the way to go in this society. And I feel like permaculture in general requires more people to come to like land and work with each other, right? And I think that in the process of like putting this event together and just like getting more into our endeavors with Morph, like the big revelation for us too has been that like the key to it all is collaboration and community and coming together. And I think you are such a prime example, Annie, of like bringing people together. And you've been an amazing, I feel like, I don't know, a friend and ally in making this happen. And I think we would not be able to like do any event like this if it weren't for like the greater community of like regenerative farming interested people. I'm not sure if I said that right, but like I think that with this last event, to answer your question more specifically, like we started out sort of as a team of two who like had this great big idea and vision, but like also did not know at all how to necessarily make that come to fruition. And it wouldn't have happened without people like you and like Nick and Spencer, who are so generous with their space and their community. And like, I think for the future, that's what we want to lean into more and more and more and more. And just like build this like network and community of people in California, but also like throughout the whole US of like farmers, artists, and people who are just interested in this whole world and want to get involved and not do it on our own anymore. Like we want other artists to take the spotlight. Like I mean, I think maybe we'll perform more events again, probably, but also I would love to have lineups of artists that are not Lonely Parrots or us, you know, like have other artists play and yeah, just like bring people together and have as many people involved as possible, like photographers, videographers, other art. I mean, the whole idea of the arts and crafts fair that we had was to like create a space too for local makers and just like artisans to have a platform. And I think that's what I want to in the future lean into. Wait, was there a question?
No, I just put chefs.
Chefs. Yes, Gary. I don't know if that resonates with you, but I feel like collaboration, leaning into that more and more, and just like the joy of sharing responsibilities and the fruit of it all. The fruit, yeah, fruits of it all. Yeah.
Amazing. Um, yeah, as you were talking, Max, I was like, oh yeah, there's certainly like the lot of the farms that you sort of we travel to for climate farm schools, like there's events, they host musical people play at these places, and it would be really cool to have a distributed network of those musicians and farms that are, calling themselves like we are doing music on regenerative farms, like we're a part of this, like just to network together a little bit, like creating the
Mhm.
social infrastructure without you all having to organize these really intensive to organize morph events that are awesome. But yeah,
Not that we don't want to organize. I
yeah,
still do want
having it be a place for those people to just identify and see the community that's also like doing that would be really empowering, I think. So
to.
let's work on that. Um, Okay, I have one more question for the three of you, and then I'm going to open it up to everyone else. And so, as I'm asking this last question, I want you all to be thinking about what questions you want to throw in, and also what in your minds is an example of an intersection of art and farming that you've either seen, experienced, participated in. Because, yeah, I'm sort of new to this official intersection as of this year, and I want to hear what other people have to say about it. So, okay, my last question is, where is it? Aha. Thinking about the climate action pathways and what I think some people have called climate wayfinding, how others can forge their path into climate action that isn't just about anxiety, grief coping mechanisms, or a sense of duty. You've all said something along the lines of climate action can be joyful, fun, sexy, or silly. It's about embracing our core humanity and not self-sacrificing or scarcity mindsets. Um, so I want, in thinking about that, for you all to maybe just elaborate on how, if you've seen any traction in shifting this narrative towards a potentially more attractive one that brings people and community into climate positive action, or where have you seen like big challenges or roadblocks where you're like, oh, actually, we need an author to write a book about this, or like we need someone else to help us convince people that it actually is joyful, or more Biggest Little Farms. Like what are either some areas of opportunity that you think people could be like, okay, let's go into this area, or, I guess challenges to overcome. I almost see those as opportunity areas too, because when I have seen a challenge, it attracts me in a way to like lend my energy to solve it in a group. But okay, we'll go back to you, Spencer.
Yeah, wonderful. I love the climate wayfinding. Did you get that from Catherine Wilkinson? Yeah, I was just reading about her upcoming book. Super excited about it. And it's something that I and Nick have been thinking about a lot on the farm, because even before we started the farm, that we actually built the farm from this kind of like, we built this, it ended up being five things. So it was called the Climate Pentagon, where it was like the five different realms of your personal life where you can find agency in climate. And we realized that like these are like the literal things, like your financial life, your professional life, your social life. But at the center of those things was like, okay, do you know and do you care? And that to us was why we started the farms, because we were like, you can have all the information, you can know what's wrong, and you can know what the solutions are. But if you don't um, like care about the issues, you aren't going to take time in your day to address them. And so I think that there's on both sides, there's like, let's make it easier for people to take climate action, both by like giving them the tools and the information they need, but also by like making it easier to engage by making it fun and participatory. But the thing that I think I've learned through this whole process is that doing it with community is the most surefire way that you're going to get climate action. And I think that we did our first San Francisco Climate Week event this year. It was called the Divestment Party, DYE. And it was a way to help people move their money away from big banks that support fossil fuels. And we brought together our like favorite clothing company called Sway LA. They do all upcycled clothing, and they do a community dye bath where you can dye your clothes, hence the dye. And so we ended up throwing like a drag show at a drag bar in San Francisco where you could bring old clothes and upcycle them. And Redwood Credit Union was there with like a few other beneficial banks. And it was like a blast and so much fun. And we gave everybody stickers that they could put on their bank cards that like will remind them every day to take their money away from those. And like I found anytime that like I want to make a change, like let's say I don't like Spotify and their business practices, but I'm just in the mode of using that platform and they don't pay artists enough. And so it takes like sitting down with a friend or doing it at a group event to change your behaviors, or like it doesn't just need to be about the individual actions, but just like, oh, let's get together and work on a community action together. To me, it's all about building a community of people, like-minded people that are driven. Um, and so that's what I think that we're building towards, and what I'm so thankful for Lainey for as well, because she is an incredible community builder and facilitator. So just yeah, super excited to be honestly in West County where there's so many like-minded people, and I think that we're like on the precipice of being able to like really work together and make climate action together.
Yay, I love that. I am right gonna write this down as the theme of not doing hard things alone, because yeah, whenever I sit down to, switch banks by myself at like 10 o'clock at night when I'm tired, I'm just like, fuck this. Or
100%.
just to like be sad.
Yeah.
I'm from the East Coast. It's very hard to like grieve in public. And, I had a moment of feeling sad that something might be developed out of like this grassy wildflower meadow into like housing, which is how people need to live in like stay somewhere. But I was just so sad. And rather than like go off by myself and like cry alone, I just like allowed myself to cry in front of a friend. And I was like, whoa, this, I feel so much better. We can talk about how to stop these things from happening. And it felt like immediately like sadness into something else that wasn't just like sadness and then bury it away by itself in like a hole. So, anyways, I like that. I'm gonna remember not to do hard things alone. Um, what do you think, Max and Michael?
I mean, I agree. I think that with like putting on the Morph event, we like started as, I mean, after like obviously thankfully you had this dinner and like we got to reconnect with Spencer and Nick and like actually meet you guys in person. But like as we like went through the planning process, like we kept like bringing in friends who had experience, whether it was like in like the booking side of an event or like the vendor side of things. And then like a friend who was with So Far Sounds for a long time helped us kind of like getting us asking like the right questions. And I think that like that was instrumental in having a successful first event. Um,
And made it so much
not
more
doing things
joyful for
alone.
us.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. 100% agreed. I think the one thing that came to my mind with your question, maybe, was that like one of the challenges that I feel or that I perceive is besides this like separation that I already talked about that's happening in our society, I feel like there's just a general disconnect from nature. And I think like I don't know, people live in their like urban worlds with so little contact to like greenery and nature. And I feel like you have to experience it in order to love it. And you have to love it in order to care for it. Right. So like I think one thing that I would be really interested in with more or like with however we can contribute as musicians is like to really also support and promote like inner city urban gardens, community gardens, regreening any city spaces, having like vertical gardens in cities, and also early education, like doing anything in art, like with art, like how can art come into play in raising money for school gardens or like having celebrations around like it, maybe money isn't even the issue, maybe it's more like getting community together and like making it, building it together because there is no budget from the school or whatever. I think like art can also be a wonderful way to get people on board with that. And I think like once more kids and people who live in these like super metropolitan spaces have the experience and proximity to greenery, I think it'll hopefully automatically like lead to more of like an incentive for those people to care for it. I don't know.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, as we urbanize, like more urban food production and green space, which inherently involves a lot of people and would be more fun if there was music there. Like that feels like a really important tractionable intersection because yeah, I think it feels more realistic to me too when I think about like the scope of the problem and the diminishing fractions of us that live in more rural farm-centered environments and like even those farms are not necessarily community spaces like bringing farms and music to community spaces which are largely urban and suburban and metropolitan is a huge undertaking that's going to take a lot of people working together so um I love that call to action. Okay, so I'm gonna pause my questions here and invite you all to come off mute, raise your hand, or share however you want your intersections of art and farming and your questions for our panelists. Hmm. Go ahead, Jane.
I have a question. Hi. Thanks everybody. That's just been like very uplifting and inspiring to hear all about it. I had a question for Spencer. So it's a very practical one. In terms of buying, I mean, you actually just went and bought a farm. Like you just
Yes, but I will say it's a rather small, small farm.
no,
Uh,
but I think that's actually there is some beauty in that. I think because I think sometimes when you think about buying a farm, it is overwhelming. You think, I mean, firstly, in my case, obviously, I don't know anything about it, but secondly, the kind of scale. So that's what I was interested in. it's a paddock. It was a paddock originally.
Yeah, so it's like
Wow.
a horse.
Okay.
It's a single family home that has
Yeah.
a horse farm and a horse
Okay.
arena. And so it's like the people who lived there before us just kept a few horses and like to ride the horses around in the arena. We're like, this dirt lot's a great place for a regenerative farm. I mean, we specifically were seeking out a place that needed regeneration, so we weren't actually
Yeah.
looking for an existing farm. We wanted it to be like, oh, what's the lowest soil organic carbon we can find, and see what the process is like to turn that around. And so the front area where we farm is only 1.5 acres. And we're not farming that much. Well, it's a mix of perennial food forest system and then a market garden. And so our actual market garden is 1/4 acre to a 1/2 acre.
Right.
It's not
And that for the events that you put on, then how much space is that like actually
so
in the?
Yeah, we have 10 acres total, 7 of which are redwood forest, which is another
Okay.
reason why I got this lot. So it's so special, and that is where we have the events. Yeah, it's the whole road of
Right. That's really, I just think it's incredibly helpful just even to understand how you can imagine something different in that way rather than being stuck with this idea of yeah, absorbed ideas of what farms should look like. So thank you.
Amazing. We'll go to Amber and then Julia.
Thanks, Lainey. I'm just really appreciating this session, especially kind of coincidentally last night I was just at a music event done by at least one climate person, Anya Lamb. I don't know if you guys know her, but um, it was amazing and there was so much joy in the room. Just kind of being together and singing together. So I'm so happy you guys are doing this. I'm an artist. I'm connected to some artists groups. So I'm just wondering how I can connect them with you to, potentially support and join in or whatever is needed. And also where I got on a little late, where your farm is. Thanks.
yes, we're in Currantville on the Russian River. Yeah, and we'd love to be connected with them. The easiest way is called email hello@solarfarms.com. Yeah, we're kind of building out our calendar for next year, whether it's an event or if it's just like a let's talk. We're so open. That's kind of like what we look for is to make this connection.
I added something for you in the chat too, Amber, about another alumni project called the Art Farm, which if you come up to Sonoma County, we can visit both. We'll go on a tour of farms that intersect with various art forms. Julia, over to you.
Yeah, I also wanted to echo a little bit of gratitude. I've been on my own regenerative economics journey for a bit, and it's the times when I'm able to be pulled out into nature or onto a farm, and then all the more so when suddenly somebody bursts into song or when there's a real artistic ritual or something that can kind of connect, I think, everybody to a deeper calling. So thank you for what you're doing. I think it's really powerful. I have a very practical question. I'm curious. I missed the concert, and I was bummed to miss it. But I'm just curious whether there are more coming up, or if and how to stay connected with program of events that you might be doing, or you're already kind of networking into that are connecting nature and art.
I guess this question goes to us. I think, well, okay, so right now we don't yet have another event of the same scale planned that we did last summer. It will 100% happen again. I think because we are like a two people team right now with this MORF endeavor, And we're also trying to like produce an album and like be artists and put all that out. It's just so much to navigate that I think hopefully there will be a bigger event in 2026. We haven't yet chosen a date or like made any plans really. But in the meantime, like we've also while we're touring, we're like trying to visit farms and play there. So Lainey has been like amazing in connecting us with different regenerative farms around the United States that we've like visited. And like maybe it was less of a big production, you know, than the MORF event at Silicon Farms, but it was still beautiful concerts. And I think there will be 100% more and more. If you want to just like follow along and see when the next one happens, I would say Instagram is probably the next one, right? Like MORF initiative. And to be completely fair, we also have been somewhat inactive on that. It's just so much to navigate, but all the more reason to widen our community around this and get more people to help us. All that to say, Instagram, I think, is the best way to see when the next one's happening.
I feel like Max and Michael are our unofficial Climate Farm School musicians. So if you want to also hear their music, just come to like our next course in the Bay Area and we'll hope to get them up for at least a night.
We would love it.
Um, cool. Well, I'm curious, yeah, what else people have experienced at this art farm space of intersection. So please do keep those coming in the chat. And Claire, call on someone if you see that. I'm just looking over at my oh, well, one of my prompts that actually Jane threw to me when we connected last week, which I want to put out there for Spencer and Max and Michael, which is that um, we do this exercise at Climate Farm School where we have people envision the future of a climate resilient, equitable food system in 2040. Um, Give people some time to feel like 15 years we can make some change, but also in 5 years you went from a horse paddock to a regenerative food forest. And so thinking about 2025 to 2030, what are some of the visions for a climate resilient community, either regionally or nationally, that you would like to see and feel like some possibility around, yeah, in that 5 year period? How could we paint some pictures of that image together so that we can have something else to think about as we're moving into a new year?
Love this question. I think, and it's kind of the natural progression of what we're doing on the farm. Our goal has always been wider and wider circles, not fixated on just what we're doing on the farm. There's going to be a lifetime of projects on farm. But now we just hired our first full-time farm manager this year, and she's really ramped up the production of what we've been able to do. And now we're kind of like, oh, how do we move our regenerative focus into our town, into our community in Sonoma County? And I think it's like there are already some amazing people in our county. Like I think Food Cooperative is a really good model for they basically help farms locally bring all of their food together, kind of like a distributor, and they're working cooperative and they help get local produce sold around the Bay Area. And I think like locally for us, something that we really care about is more local ownership. I think we see a lot of, like these small businesses struggling because they're paying really high rents to like property that's owned in somebody's trust fund, and it's just a bunch of money getting funneled out of our community, and that makes prices higher for locals who are trying to eat healthy food and makes it hard for small business owners. So I think that we're really focused on, as you ladder up where to the growing of the food. I think honestly Sonoma County is doing a pretty good job. There's lots of things to make better, but the distribution and then the sale. And so I think we would love to see, healthier food options, more local produce, and more local ownership and work cooperatives. It's kind of like our dream vision.
I love that. That's a lot to work on in 5 years, but it does feel tractionable. So I almost feel like I've seen a shift in my couple of years living in West Sonoma County too, in favor of like like the more sort of there's some anger fueling it, but the more around like Black Fridays and holiday giving, it's like do not shop from the big companies. Like make it yourself, buy it from someone else who made it, or like go to these things in smaller towns around us, or feel like they're like offering more to people who have that mindset. So it is, um, I like that. What else you got for 5 years from now, Max and Michael?
In 5 years from now, in terms of like more at our vision for it, or our
I think like morph and how it relates to like your food system or your like food climate action Venn diagram. Yeah, even like collaborations that you'd like to see so you're not just like the two people carrying
yeah,
the initiative forward alone or in a duo.
Yeah, I mean, I think building a team of people who can help us, I don't know, I guess build like a roster of farms, interested artists. We already have like a template for that, but just like continuing to grow that, I think is going to be super helpful because the goal for this is to make it a concert series, not just like a one-off type of thing. We'd love to be able to help farms raise money. I mean, I think there's a lot of long-term goals for this. I think as two professional musicians, and that's like our backgrounds, we like are really open to collaboration with people who have a maybe more of an understanding of the administrative side of like nonprofits. I think that's kind of the direction that we're hoping to go. But yeah, I don't know what are your
I
thoughts?
mean, yeah, for sure. That I think I hope that in 5 years from now there will be more concerts all over the United States. I would love for there to be a bigger like festival type event once a year that sort of, I mean, and I think, look, I also feel like in order to make this more, I hate the word mainstream in this context, but also we've been talking about joyful, sexy, fun. Like the idea of it is that more it's appealing to more people. I think because we need more people to be on board with like more sustainable practices, I think. And so I'm thinking, okay, getting bigger artists involved is going to be like probably a hugely helpful thing. And this is like the biggest vision sort of idea, and might just always be a dream, but someone like Billie Eilish, who I know is like one of the biggest artists in the world, but she's like she is all about climate action and
Very outspoken.
very outspoken. She has these like what market type things at her concerts where I mean Claire was telling us about it and she was actually tabling at one, right? But where different climate organizations come together and have get to share what they're doing with concert goers. I think that is so cool. If someone like Billie Eilish, who I believe would be super into the concept of regenerative farming, was open to like
variants with genetic markers, and sequencing just came out with an AI.
I don't know where that's coming from, but like attaching her name to
And it helps you understand
MORF or like just being a part of like those kinds of concerts, festivals. I think it would make big waves, and I hope that in the next 5 to 10 years, like something like that would come to fruition.
Those are very cool components of a vision from both of you. I think like a lot of us got into nonprofit or mission driven or like artistic work without having necessarily an administrative or business entrepreneurship mindset. And I feel like I want someone to collaborate with me who has that. So, anyways, that and bringing this into a dominant narrative paradigm shift by engaging, people that are like have audiences and platforms and larger artists, I think is an awesome vision. And I think there's like a potential synergy forming with what I've heard from one of our sister initiatives at Plant Futures. They've been trying to tap into more of the like electronic music festivals or big music festivals across the country and make sure that they're offering food sustainably and plant-based options and composting and like zero waste events. And so I think these things feel like they're happening in isolation. Sometimes there's a zero waste event, but all the food is meat, or like there's like, the artists are not talking anything about the things that are happening behind the scenes at the festival. So having an integrated, artists who care, food that's local, like it's not being wasted, it's all turning into compost, like in a worm compost machine right there. Like there's ways that this can be, accelerated a little bit more. And I do think of the slow marketing approach that I'm kind of experiencing and turning people on to week-long experiences on farms versus like the fast experience of having Billie Eilish talk about something and get 20,000 people like on board that day, feels like a good mix of like moving fast and slow. Because I'm not generally a fan of the word fast, but I think a lot of things can be slow and in a good way, and then you can have like a little accelerators, like a summer day in Alaska where you just get a lot of growth in 24 hours. Um, so
Wait,
yeah.
Lainey, you were saying one of your sister organizations is Plant
Plant
Vision or
Futures. I'm going to put you
Plant.
guys in touch. That's one of my commitments. Plant Futures. The executive director, Samantha, is working with a lot of big music festivals. They're not your style of music per se, but I think again, it's like, it's an all of the above approach. And I think she would want to work with musicians and music events that are maybe first explicitly farm centered and then also bring in these like larger portolas and like everything, whatever else they go to, music festivals I've never even heard of, into a similar ethos mindset. So, anyways, you and Sam will have a great conversation about this and we'll work towards the vision. Um, yeah,
I
cool.
more
What else?
thought that oh never mind.
Yeah.
No, I just like really resonate with what you just said about like the fast versus slow approach and like having I feel like I don't know, I feel like we're at a point in time where we need to try it all, like do it all, have like longer term or longer lasting experiences that are offered like Climate Farm School, which I think is so transformative. But I think in order for people
Mm.
to go there and choose that, they have to have like a sort of seed experience.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's
Yeah.
what something like MORF can be. And I
Yeah.
also feel like I hope it didn't get lost in translation. When I'm talking about like Billie Eilish doing a festival, for example, that does never ever mean for me as a musician that I wanted to replace like the smaller scale like indie artist events, for example, because I think like ideally once bigger artists come on board, this can also uplift like the indie artists and whatever. I think
Mhm.
all of it needs to happen. And so just want to add.
Totally. Totally. That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, we do, yeah, it's like those moments of awakening happen in all different corners. And like we have a lot of people come to us because they watch Biggest Little Farm too. And so that's like a bigger scale thing. But then I think it does create space for smaller farms to feel like supported by their community members because they've also had yeah, it can be a way of building an inclusive movement. So,
I want to say
um,
I actually just went to the Billie Eilish concert. A friend had us, and she's amazing, and she like allows all of these environmental people to set up as people enter. She has like nonprofits there to teach people about a bunch of different stuff. But I will say that I've struggled with the dominant idea of like crowd looks at single person, and I think that the types of events that you put on are so important for a different type of community building where it's like we're here gathering together and it's like more intimate and it feels rooted in a place and it's not about like um
mhm.
I don't know, these gods that are on stage or something. I do think it kind of can be a different, it's part of a different ethos to have these types of
Yeah.
really more intimate events.
Totally. Totally. Well, that's a really good point. And to think about as we're maybe finding our ways into action, it's like, yeah, when I think about catalytic moments for me, it's been like small group or one-on-one conversations that really helped me get from a place of like stuckness or anxiety into something new. And so it really was like two farmers that I worked with and talked to who helped me come up with the idea and framework for Climate Farm School. And they believed in the idea before I really believed in it for myself. And so it is, yeah, I see in groups of 10 to 12 a lot of potential for people to work through stuff together. And I feel like you lose that when you get into a group of like 50 or more. So that is very, very true and important to recognize and seek out ways that you can talk to trusted individuals, new friends, like smaller groups, while we're having these like bigger, yeah, events happening around us in the background. Um, yeah, that's a good point. Gonna have some soup conversations this winter. Okay, amazing. Well, we have 2 minutes left. So I am going to kind of like get into my thank yous and closings unless anyone has anyone else to add, anything else to add, or any resources to share. I'm really grateful to, yeah, Max and Michael and Spencer and Claire for helping me organize this. And we're going to be doing more conversation series, probably monthly over this, what we call our winter off season, potentially continuing into the spring. But really, the important part about this for us is that we're checking in with people that we work with, that we want to keep collaborating with, and highlighting their amazing land projects and artistic projects. And rather than have these conversations as an organizational team of two or three, we want to just keep inviting our alumni, friends of our farmers and artists, and your networks to come and be a part of this. So we'll be sharing who we're speaking with next in our newsletters and on social media. So definitely follow along and feel free to suggest people that you want to hear and check in with from our network or yours. We're kind of pretty open about these virtual talks, and I enjoy them when I'm, hibernating and waiting to get back out on the farms in the spring. Thank you all so much, and have a great rest of your Mondays.
You all.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Lainey.
much.
Thank you.